Sup guys, it's Alex here and welcome to my 2020 NCAA tournament predictions video based off of Selection Sunday Updates' Instagram page. I'll go ahead and shout them out right here. This is Selection Sunday Updates on Instagram. I have been following them for a little bit now, and they are creating their own NCAA tournament. They had a whole selection committee who reseeded the entire NCAA tournament field since Selection Sunday in real life ended up getting canceled, and so did the tournament itself. So they are doing their own version of the NCAA tournament, which I think is really cool. They had their whole selection committee reseed the teams based off of different seedings and picking their own winner of the different conferences and stuff. It was really cool to follow along, and I think it'd be really cool to give my predictions. And you can enter their bracket challenge by going to this Google Doc right here, going to March Madness Bracket Challenge, and then filling it out however you see fit. I already did mine, so I'm not going to fill it out right there, but I'll be giving my own predictions here, and then you can kind of do it yourself. And the way that this is going to work is like, so we'll go ahead and pick this West region right here. They have the 8 seed Michigan versus 9 seed Marquette. They will be posting stories with like a poll thing to where you can pick who you think is going to win. And then in total, once all the votes have been casted for a period of time, I think this is going to start Tuesday with the first 4, which is tomorrow. And then the first round games are going to start on Thursday. But say 60% of the people pick Michigan, 40% of the people pick Marquette. They will go to a random number or entry simulator, and they will put 60 entries for Michigan and 40 entries for Marquette. And whichever number the random simulator ends up spitting out is going to be who moves on in the tournament. So that way the people have a vote or have a say in picking the favorites and being able to change the course of the NCAA tournament, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really neat idea to kind of play those games since they can't really be played, and the NCAA game sim can be a bit weird, as you guys saw with my simulating the 2020 NCAA tournament challenge video. But I think this is really cool what they're doing, and I'm going to go ahead and shout them out here because I think it's going to be really fun to follow and really fun to follow along with. The bracket challenge, as you can see, is right there. All you have to do is just click that link in there. I think it takes maybe 5 minutes to fill out. It's pretty cool to do, and let's go ahead and get into my predictions based off of their bracketology, which is completely different than like Joe Lunardi's or Jerry Palm's and stuff. There are tons of different matchups here which I haven't seen before. Like, say, right here in this Midwest region, there is St. Louis. Like, that team was never in like Jerry Palm's or Joe Lunardi's bracketology, and I thought they had a really good chance to win. I mean, I think I picked them to win the A10 conference tournament, so I would have had them in my bracketology. Selection Sunday Updates has them in theirs, so I think it's pretty credible. Let's go and get into my predictions. So at first, I'll have Kansas here moving on past Boston University. I think that one's going to be a pretty obvious one. Then we have Rutgers here moving on past St. Mary's. That one will probably be a 50-50 matchup, but it'll be interesting to see how the simulation goes on that one. Then we'll have Ohio State here moving on past NC State and Texas. I guess that matchup will be decided either Tuesday or Wednesday. I think that'd be pretty cool. I will be going with Texas whenever I actually make my selection, but then I think they will fall to Ohio State. Then we have 4 seed Villanova facing Hofstra. I've seen Villanova seeded as a 2 to 4 in different bracketologies, and they have them as a 4. Then we're going to go with St. Louis here upsetting West Virginia. I think that they could definitely get the upset there, and you guys know how much I don't like West Virginia this season. Then I'm going to go with Maryland moving on past Eastern Washington. Though if you've been watching my NCAA Basketball 10 series, you know that Eastern Washington is a team to watch out for. They were able to upset Seton Hall. Then Arizona and Texas Tech are playing up next. I think this matchup is going to be released on my channel for NCAA Basketball 10 on, I think, either like Wednesday or Thursday. We'll kind of see what happens with that. But I'm going to go with Arizona here with Nico Mannion moving on past Texas Tech with Chris Beard as their coach. I think Texas Tech, after making it to the national championship last year, are going to fall short here against Arizona. And then I'm going to go with Kentucky here moving on past North Dakota State. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Kansas here moving on past Rutgers. Then I'm going to go with Ohio State here moving on past Villanova. I don't really like Villanova this season moving on too far in the bracket. I just can't really get behind them. Plus, I really like Ohio State. They were able to turn it on as the course of the season progressed, especially in like the beginning of February to now. Then St. Louis and Maryland, as much as I'd like to see an 11 seed with St. Louis here moving on, I do have to go with Anthony Cowan and Maryland moving on, and they will face the winner of Arizona and Kentucky, which you guys already know. That's going to be Kentucky here moving on past Arizona. But then for a spot in the Elite Eight, Kansas versus Ohio State, we have Ohio State falling to Kansas. I thought I kind of put a little bit of an emphasis there on Ohio State, but I do think that Kansas will end up winning there. I could see Ohio State winning that game, but I think that Kansas has been a really good team throughout the course of the season, and who knows who's going to end up in that position in the actual simulation itself, or the simulator, whatever you want to call it. I got Kansas moving on, and they will face the winner of Maryland and Kentucky, which I do think will be Kentucky here moving on. The 2C Kentucky Wildcats, which makes kind of like a chalk thing here in the Elite Eight. We have Kansas and Kentucky, and I'm going to go with the #1 overall seed in Kansas. It'll be interesting to see how the actual bracket challenge goes, but I do think Kansas will be able to make it out of that bracket. So then over here in the East Regional, we'll go ahead and start with Dayton here, moving on past Winthrop. I think that one will be pretty obvious. LSU and USC, this one's another 50-50 matchup for me. I'm going to go with USC. I still can't pronounce that. Really good guys. That center, I think he's a freshman. His last name, he's going to be a lottery pick in the draft, but I still can't pronounce it for some reason. I'm not going to even try. I'm going to go with USC, though, moving on past LSU. Then I'm going to go with an upset pick here and go with Liberty beating Auburn. Auburn was kind of faltering down the stretch, and then Liberty won the ASUN championship. So I'm going to go with Auburn pulling off the upset. Then New Mexico State and I'm going to go with Liberty pulling off the upset of Auburn. Then I'm going to have New Mexico State here moving on, upsetting Oregon as the 13/4. I figure most people will probably end up picking Oregon to move on here, but I like New Mexico State a lot. I've been following along with them, and they've been losing. They haven't lost a game since December 15th. I think they were on a 20-game win streak. They were super hot heading into the tournament. I think they could have turned some heads once they got there, but we'll never know what happens with that, and that'll set up a 12 versus 13 for a spot in the Sweet 16. Then Iowa and Richmond, I'm going to go with Luka Garza and Iowa here, moving on past Richmond. Seton Hall, I think, will move on past Akron. Providence, I think, is one of the hottest teams here. I think they'll be able to move on past Cincinnati, which I think Cincinnati is a bit high here, seated as a 10 seed. I was kind of surprised with the selection committee. They were like a last four in team for me, but, I mean, okay. We'll have Cincinnati in there as a 10 seed here. Then Florida State, I think, will be able to beat Texas State. Texas State, I think, is taking the place of Little Rock. I think the selection committee thought that Texas Tech would be able to beat Little Rock in their conference tournament. But then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we do have Obi Toppin and Dayton here moving on past USC. New Mexico State, I think, would pull off the upset here and move into the Sweet 16 as a 13 seed over Liberty. Then I'm going to go with Miles Powell and Seton Hall here moving on past Iowa. I think that one is a 50-50 matchup there. I could easily see Iowa pulling off the upset there, especially in the battle-tested Big Ten. But the Big East is also presents many opportunities for battle-tested teams, and Seton Hall is coming out of that conference as one of them. I think they get the job done there. I'm going to go with, I really want to pick Providence to pull off the upset here, but I am going to go with Leonard Hamilton. I mean, they were the ACC regular season champs, and now they are the ACC champions. They were awarded the conference tournament too, so we'll kind of see what happens with that. But I think that Leonard Hamilton will be able to move his team into the Sweet 16, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in the Elite 8 as well. Florida State will beat Seton Hall to move into the Elite 8, and I am going to go with Dayton and Obi Toppin here, moving on past New Mexico State and into the Elite 8. I know I have 1 versus 2 in both of these Elite 8 so far, but wait till you see the other side of the bracket, and I am going to go with Dayton and Obi Toppin here, moving on past Florida State and into the Final Four. So then if we go over here to the right side of the bracket, we will go ahead and go up to the West Regional with Gonzaga. We'll go ahead and move the camera over there. Gonzaga as the 1 seed facing the winner of Robert Morris and Siena. We are going to go with Gonzaga here, moving on as the winner. I think that one's going to be pretty obvious. Then we got Marquette and Marcus Howard moving on past Michigan. In my opinion, Marquette just has the star power there, and Marcus Howard needs to get his only win of his NCAA tournament career in there. I think they get the job done there. Then I'm going to go with Virginia here as a 5 seed. I like that. They may be a bit high for some people as a 5, but I think putting them as like a 7 or 8 may be a bit low. But Virginia, I do think, will be able to move on against Yale. Then Vermont will give Wisconsin a challenge, but I do think Wisconsin, they were on like an 8-game win streak heading into the Big Ten tournament, and I think they'd be able to move on there past Vermont. They're going to go with an upset here with East Tennessee State. I hate that I'm picking them here over Illinois, but I do think they'd be able to make be able to move on here. I think the entire starting lineup was made up of 5 seniors. They were a team to watch out for if you've been watching my bracketologies the entire season. I think they'd get the job done there. I'm going to go with Louisville here, moving on past Western Kentucky, a battle of the 2 Kentucky teams. The selection committee thought that Western Kentucky would be able to beat North Texas in their conference championship, and I agree, but I do think they would fall here to Louisville as the 3 seed. Then we have Houston moving on past Colorado, and San Diego State moving on past UC Irvine. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we have Gonzaga moving on past Marcus Howard and Marquette. I'd like to see Marquette win that game, but I just can't see it happen. Then I'm going to go with Wisconsin here, moving on past Virginia. Wisconsin, I think, could definitely make it to the Sweet 16. Moving on past Virginia, though, that one would be a really low-scoring game, in my opinion. I don't see that one cracking even 60 points for either team. Then East Tennessee State and Louisville. As much as I want to see East Tennessee State pull off the upset there, I do think that Louisville will move on as the 3 over 11. I think Louisville just has a really talented team this year, especially with Jordan Nwora. If he can stay hot, I think they move on there past East Tennessee State. They're going to go with San Diego State moving on here as the 2 seed past Houston. But then for a spot in the Elite Eight, I am going to go with Wisconsin pulling off the upset over Gonzaga. The Fighting Mark Fuse fall short of getting him his first national championship. They do have the best offense in college basketball, but I think they would falter here against Wisconsin and not make the Elite Eight out of that conference or out of that region. Then we have Louisville. I think they would be able to move on past San Diego State and into the Elite Eight. And then for a spot in the Final Four, I do have 3 seed Louisville moving on. I think Louisville is one of those teams that can either lose first round or make it to the Final Four, and why not let it fly? I have 2 1 seeds on that left side of the bracket. Why not have some madness here and get that 3 seed in the Final Four out of that regional? And then if we take a look over here in the South, we do have Baylor as the 1 seed moving on past NC Central and Prairie View A&M. That one won't matter too much. Then we have Florida. I think with Kerry Blackshear, we'll be able to move on past Utah State. Then Stephen F. Austin will pull off the upset here over Butler. I think this is a perfect matchup for Stephen F. Austin to move on as a 12. And that will set up a rematch of Stephen F. Austin and Duke. More on that later. Then BYU, I think, as one of the best offensive teams in the nation, will be able to move on here past the winner of Arizona State and Indiana, which I think would be Arizona State. Then we got Michigan moving on past Northern Kentucky. Penn State. So then we have Penn State versus UCLA, 7 seed Penn State versus 10 seed UCLA. These 2 teams were like 6 and 11, I think, in the Joe Lunardi's bracketology, and now they're still together, but in different seedings. I think that UCLA would get the slight 10 over 7 upset here. I know I had Penn State winning it all in that simulation, which, I mean, I didn't have it. That's what NCAA GameSim had. I think that this one is another 50-50 matchup. I mean, Penn State looked great throughout the course of the season up until the end, and then they go out and lose to Northwestern right before the postseason started. So that's why I'm going to go with UCLA, who's one of the hottest teams in the nation at this point. And we got Creighton here moving on past Bradley. Then Baylor versus Florida. These 2 teams faced off in the regular season, which Baylor won, and I think they would win again in that sort of situation. Then Stephen F. Austin and Duke. Stephen F. Austin went into Duke and pulled off one of the most historic upsets of all time this season, and why not let it fly? I mean, this is all for fun. I'm going to go with Stephen F. Austin here, moving on as the 12 over 4 over Duke. I think they could definitely get the victory there, and I would love to see them defeat Duke again here on a neutral floor. I know it probably wouldn't happen, but I think that I think they went 28-3 over the course of the regular season. I think they could get the job done. They already proved they can beat Duke. Why not let it fly again? They're going to go with Michigan State here, moving on as the 3 over 6 over BYU. Then UCLA and Creighton. I think Creighton will move on here as a higher seeded team. Then Baylor and Stephen F. Austin. Why not let it fly? Why not keep going with the Cinderella? Why not put 12-seeded Stephen F. Austin in the Elite Eight? I think that they could definitely beat Baylor. Baylor was kind of faltered down the stretch. They lost like 3 out of their last 5 games or something like that. I'm going to go with Stephen F. Austin here, who hasn't lost in a long time. I think they get the job done and be the Cinderella story of the 2020 NCAA tournament. And they will face Michigan State, who I think will be Creighton to move on to the Elite Eight, and then fall short against Michigan State, which, I mean, Stephen F. Austin will fall short against Michigan State here, and Michigan State will move on to the Final Four to face Louisville, which now sets up a Final Four of Kansas and Dayton and Louisville and Michigan State. And then for a spot in the national championship game, we do have Dayton with Obi Toppin here moving on past Kansas. I think these two teams did face off in Maui, and Kansas won in overtime. I think Dayton gets the revenge here and moves on to the national championship game, where they will face Michigan State here as the 3 seed. And for the national championship winner itself, I am going to go with Michigan State. I do think Dayton has this. Obviously, this is probably the greatest season in Dayton history, and Obi Toppin will, I think, be the National Player of the Year if they do end up announcing it, which I think they probably will this year. But I do think Michigan State will win. They were the preseason #1 team for a reason, and they were one of the hottest teams in the nation when the season did come to an end for everybody. I think Michigan State gets the victory here as a 3 seed, and we'll kind of see what happens with the actual bracket challenge and the random simulator and stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you go check out Selection Sunday updates and follow along with their page and respond to their polls on their story. I think it'd be really fun to do and follow along with. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all later. Good luck on your brackets.